And greetings. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show here, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast with Todd Erzin and Aaron McIntyre. I'm Steve Deace. We're brought to you by our friends over at Patriot Mobile. You know, it's great that more and more people want to get into the red parallel economy space. However, the truth is there's only one provider that boldly stands in the gap for Americans who believe freedom is still worth fighting for, and that's Patriot Mobile. Not only are they leading the red economy, they are the trailblazers in this space. They're also outpacing the competition in technology. They're one of the only carriers offering premium access on all three major U.S. networks. You can switch if you are a member anytime you want to any of those networks for free. They also offer unlimited data plans, mobile hotspots, international roaming, and more. Switching easier than ever. Activate in minutes from your home or office. And I'm telling you, it's easy. Our family, they have been served incredibly well by Patriot Mobile for going on 5 years now. All right, so keep your number, keep your phone, or upgrade in either situation. Take a stand today, but also get fantastic mobile phone service. That's the most important thing here. By going to patriotmobile.com/Steve, use the promo code Steve to get started with a free month of service today at patriotmobile.com/Steve. Code Steve to get started with a free month of service today. And also don't forget, if you go to blazetv.com/Deace this weekend for Black Friday, biggest discount you're going to find for a year-long subscription to Blaze TV as we head in to the crucial midterms of 2026, when frankly a lot of what's left of the Trump presidency may be determined by what happens. If you take advantage of this now, you're going to be with us all the way through next year's midterms and the immediate aftermath as well. All right. So it's a perfect time to take advantage of this huge discount for Black Friday by going to blazetv.com/Deace. Use the code BlackFriday40. Code BlackFriday40 at blazetv.com/Deace, and you'll get all of the exclusive content that we produce every day and all of, or at least most of next year. And you'll get a big discount with the code Deace at blazetv.com/Deace. I'm sorry, code BlackFriday40. Code BlackFriday40 at blazetv.com/Deace. All right, coming up on today's show, next hour, we'll have some fake news or not. I've had something stuck in my craw about a pop culture trend for a while now, and I'm wondering, am I wrong or right? And I went and saw the new Wicked movie last night, and both these films are exceptionally well-made movies. And you guys know I love The Wizard of Oz. All right, I love it. I was so excited. I got a speaking engagement lined up for January in Vegas. One that'll get me out of some wintry weather here in Iowa for a bit, but also have you guys seen that massive Sphere theater in Vegas? Have you guys seen this profiled? Do you know what movie they're showing there through the end of January?
That?
They're showing Wizard of Oz. I can't wait to go and see it in this facility. I'm pumped. Okay. I hate the story. I hate the story of Wicked. I hate the retconning of the Wicked Witch as a misunderstood anti-hero of some kind. I don't like it when Marvel does this with their villains. I disdain it. Am I right or wrong? We'll discuss that for Pop Culture Tuesday coming up at the end of the show. At the bottom of this hour, you guys know our prime directive is biblical worldview. And so whenever someone writes a book about what the Bible really says about some of the hot button issues in all of existence, I'm usually in, but especially if that book is written by one of the best conservative U.S. senators of this era, Jim DeMint. And he's going to join us coming up at the bottom of this hour. But until then, it is good to have Aaron back for the rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by a coup in the making. The Department of War, as well as President Trump, is starting to sound the alarms over the despicable video certain Democrat veteran lawmakers put out last week, ambiguously calling for the unambiguous sabotage of the military.
You can refuse illegal orders.
You can refuse illegal orders.
You must refuse illegal orders.
The FBI says they are now scheduling interviews with those 6 Democrat lawmakers in the aftermath of that video. This morning, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth posted on social media, quote, "This was a politically motivated influence operation. It never named a specific illegal order. It created ambiguity rather than clarity, and it used carefully scripted legal-sounding language. It subtly reframed military obedience around partisan distrust instead of established legal processes. In the military, vague rhetoric and ambiguity undermines trust, creates hesitation in the chain of command, and erodes cohesion. Hegseth went on to say, as veterans of various sorts, the seditious six knew exactly what they were doing, sowing doubt through a politically motivated influence operation. The Department of War won't fall for it or stand for it. Meanwhile, Arizona Senator Mark Kelly, one of the key figures in that aforementioned video, is now fundraising off of his calls for sedition. Senator Alyssa Slotkin over the weekend clarified, saying she just wanted troops and intelligence assets to pretend like it's just like the movies.
You watch, A Few Good Men. Like, we have plenty of examples since World War II in Vietnam where people were told to follow illegal orders, and they did it, and they were prosecuted for it.
Ukraine this morning seems to be poised to accept the peace agreement proposed by the Trump administration. Moscow could still reject the proposal if the details being worked out are different than what they understood during their delegation's visit to Alaska a few months ago. In other news, independent journalist Herridge sat down for a one-on-one interview with FBI Director Kash Patel and drilled him for nearly 4 minutes regarding the Butler, Pennsylvania near-assassination of then-candidate Trump. Herridge directly asked Patel what Thomas Matthew Crooks' motive was.
He, as has been publicized, had a basically hateful relationship with the United States government, talked disparagingly about both political parties, to include President Trump, and talked about the need to take matters into his own hands, and unfortunately that's what he did.
Under Director Wray, were there missed opportunities to stop Thomas Crooks?
That's a question you'll have to ask him. Part of what we're doing is providing the information to the American public, and most importantly, Congress, to get to the American public so they can answer those questions. We weren't there when it happened. We weren't responsible for the investigation. We don't know what happened and why those decisions were made, but we're doing what we can to clean it up.
Additionally, in recent days, the FBI has released more of their view on the Crooks saga, including an overt claim that he didn't have any communication with a European, supposedly, who goes by the name of Willie Tepes. As the New York Post's Miranda Devine points out, this is a falsehood based on her reporting. Crooks did indeed have multiple interactions with a man by that name. Further clarification from the FBI seems to be in order. Remember that Democrat in Tennessee who's the nominee for the 7th Congressional District special election, who was caught last week talking about how much she hates Nashville, the city she wants to represent in Congress? Well, she's back. This is Afton Bain.
My therapist always asks me to transcribe my dreams when they happen. And the recurring dream I've had is standing up in a cafeteria full of women. I don't know why I was there or whatever, and saying, I don't want children, I want power, and just screaming it at the top of my lungs. And for someone who grew up with my mother telling me never have kids because you'll have to give up a lot. You'll have to sacrifice professionally, which is what she was saying. And where I am now with seeing the consequences and the ramifications of women having kids and being in the political field and what they're able to achieve, because we don't offer, it's like the political field hasn't met the challenge of working moms. They really haven't. But also the deeply patriarchal structures that these women are involved with because they've chosen marriage and they've chosen to raise children.
That is Afton Bain, Democrat nominee for Tennessee's 7th Congressional District in their special election, and she is legion. As Brad Wilcox from the National Marriage Project points out, people like Afton Bain are just a natural outgrowth of an increasingly rabid anti-family bent from the Democrat Party. Shown here in data from the Institute for Family Studies, an increasing minority of Democrat women say they've never been married or had kids. And that's what happened while we were away.
All right. There's a couple of fronts where I think we can have a pretty robust worldview conversation. But first, let's have a very practical one. Just give me, each of you, your boilerplate assessment right now of Kash Patel.
Unsure.
You're unsure, or he's unsure?
He's unsure about basically everything. I just don't. As has been reported, you heard him drop that phrase. Was the FBI doing that reporting about his motivations?
No.
I don't seem to recall that. So anything the FBI has revealed, they weren't the first ones revealing anything.
Is the trial that we were supposedly told is why he couldn't speak?
He had every
Did that trial conclude that he can talk to Catherine now?
Was he talking about Ryan Routh,
right.
Ruth, however you pronounce his name, or was he talking about the Butler, Pennsylvania Crooks near-assassination? Again, the more they open their mouth, the more that they release, the more questions that they actually beg. Like the clarification on this Willie Tepes dude or not dude, whatever he is. That might just be an alias.
It likely is.
It's mind-boggling. It invokes absolutely no confidence whatsoever. And again, I say to you, if they came out and said, okay, we were lying, we had to cover up for this reason, we had to play things close to the vest for this reason, here's everything we know. And it's everything that maybe Tucker Carlson, Miranda Devine has pointed out. Who would believe him at that point? The FBI in and of itself, before Kash and Dan came, they've completely shot their credibility whatsoever. So again, I'm not even sure if they're in a position where they can actually do any illumination, where they can actually answer any of the questions that we have, because they haven't, from the word go, it doesn't seem like, from my vantage point, from the word go, they really haven't shown themselves to be that forthcoming. Or maybe it's just all of us out here in the cheap seats are just wrong about everything, and there really is no they're there. Those are the only two answers. Either mass hysteria, or they're just lying and covering up. I refuse to believe just incompetence gets you to this level.
I agree with the latter. Before I get to you, I want to follow up on something you said, Aaron, and get your take on it. I continue, and Catherine's very good at this, and it's cost her some of her own career by being very good and honest at a lot of this. But I continue to be frustrated at obvious follow-up questions in these interviews that do not get asked. Can I throw one your way, Aaron, and get your reaction to it? Okay. How is it possible that you have no idea what the actions of the previous FBI were? How is that possible?
That was going to be my comment.
Because here, Mr. Patel, I assume you had trials that you guys had to pick up and investigations you had to pick up and on other matters from the previous regime. That you guys weren't given just an empty slate on day one. Everything had been wrapped up and you guys get to start from zero, right? There was carryover, right? So what do you do in a trial then? Hey, we have no chain of evidence. We have no chain of investigation, no chain of custody. We don't know what the previous FBI was up to. We're just trying to figure this out on our own. How, Aaron, is that remotely possible? How is it?
At best, it's disingenuous. At worst, it's something very dark.
Yeah, I just don't trust the guy. I think he's lying to me like every time he talks, Kash Patel. I just think he's lying to me. I'm just going to be honest. He's lying to me every time.
We are told, how did Kash Patel make his bones?
By being a special investigator of these things, yes.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you're very well aware of what the culture of that three-letter agency is. But when it comes to this case, you're going to have to ask Director Wray, former director. I just don't believe him. Just don't.
I think it's either a lie, Todd, every time the guy speaks, I think it's a lie of omission and commission. Every time Dan speaks, it feels like there's some mental constipation there, and he's battling with how much can I actually excrete here, okay? Am I allowed to, how much am I allowed to excrete into the toilet here? Everything from Dan is pained. That I see. Everything from Kash, I just think is dishonest.
From a different place.
Yes, yeah. From Kash, I just feel like everything's is a lie of omission, commission, constantly.
If that's true, Thanos didn't teach him how to lie because he's so bad at it. He must think the I in FBI stands for like inept or inconsequential or inert, because it's
ignorant. Yes.
I was going to comment about Catherine anyways. If you're supposed to investigate things, yet you are saying, I don't know, I can't even investigate. He's saying, I can't investigate my own organization, let alone whatever else I'm supposed to be investigating.
Great point. Yeah.
This is the point about if he's lying, and I think he is, he's terrible at it.
Yeah, of course he's lying. Of course he is. And he is terrible at it. And so all the questions that remain from that point forward become increasingly uncomfortable. And you're out of benign and innocent explanations.
I think most people in that job, this is not a defense of him, but I think unless you have Ron DeSantis level of 0 Fs to give, I think Washington is a place that it triangulates in on you so hard and finds your Achilles heel. And most people...
And everyone has one because we're human.
Oh,
yep.
Yeah, but that's a theological truth. But we've lowered the bar so far
that's
on our...
True too.
All we do is have excuses.
Let me give
days.
Since you went there.
We're victims all the time. We have too much comfort. This is why I make this point all the time. That's not good enough. We have got to run the damn country.
All right, let me throw a hypothetical out there. Just hypothetically speaking. Let's test your theorem, okay? Hypothetically speaking. Let's say that Kash Patel is in on some of the honeypot sex party hijinks. Let's say he's, on Corey Mills's, text thread of where the semi-trafficked women are heading tonight, and are you in? Let's say that that's true, okay? If just based on what you just said, based on where morality is today, if it came out that Kash Patel was involved in all kinds of DC, occultic level orgies, but he told us the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth on Thomas Matthew Crooks, on the deep state stuff that he supposedly is the guy on. You see what I'm trying to say? How would the public weigh that, do you think? Would the public say, well, this person's just, this level of morality, immorality, we can't stomach, so your public behavior no longer matters? Or would people largely say, you know what, I already voted for a guy for president 3 times.
I was good.
Because he did a good job.
Who's our president?
Yeah, I'm not asking Kash Patel to pastor my church or priest my rectory. All right, I hired him to do a job. All right, and while I may find that behavior to be deplorable, ultimately that's between him and his God and whoever his significant other is at the time, and what he cares about his reputation. All I really needed Kash Patel to do is be a vessel of deconstructing the deep state. So the blackmail material against him, allegedly, of course, the blackmail material there against him is of no concern to me because he did his job. I kind of think, and we may not like that, to a certain degree, but I do kind of think of where we are postmodernism, post-sexual revolution. I really don't think it would matter at all. I really don't. I don't.
Genuinely.
If he did the job, I don't think it would matter.
Generally speaking, I agree with that.
So then that's not an excuse then for being captured is what we're saying.
Right.
So then we're left with either he doesn't know that, there is something in his personal life that has him completely compromised and he doesn't know that. Or things get even more sinister then, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. If we're talking people aren't just have, blackmail material over their heads, then we're getting into the, like cigarette smoking man kind of realms of off-label government here at this point then. You better, to the point you're almost hoping these people are this compromised.
Yeah, more or less.
Then, you know what? Then these institutions are irredeemable then and just have to be mothballed at that point.
Probably, yes.
But we all agree, to some varying degree, we don't trust anything Kash Patel says literally about anything.
Pretty
on the
much.
surface.
No, not at all.
I mean, if Tyler Robinson's family, see, that's the whole thing with the whole Candace Owens thing. I mean, you have to, then why did Tyler Robinson's family, I don't trust the FBI's investigation at all. Why'd they turn their own son in then? Why'd they turn over all the texts? You see what I'm, so they framed their own kid, And if the kid's a useful idiot, we've seen all kinds of. Anybody here believe Epstein killed himself on this panel here on the show? Anybody believe this?
No.
So we've seen all kinds of useful idiots just magically disappear if they have to, right? Okay. Then we have one of the most outspoken Epstein victims just somehow die in a vehicular accident, got ran over by a car or something a few months ago, wasn't it? Earlier this year, wasn't it? All right. So, and then we all just move on. Okay. If Tyler Robinson was absolutely just a complete and total simp, patsy, then he wouldn't be alive right now. I mean, so that's what blows that entire narrative up. But the reason why so many people fall for it is because of the entire 10-minute conversation we just had. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There is prima facie evidence to believe that there's nothing, you can't believe anything these people say or do, even when there are people in charge.
Especially when people in the public are so clamoring for actual results on any and all fronts. you would become people.
I mean,
would
if
be
Kash
building-
Patel had an OnlyFans page and he put his alleged sexcapades up online for all to watch, but he was telling us what really happened on these 2 or 3 issues, would it matter? I don't think that's good, but I also don't think it would. I don't think it would matter at all with where we are today. People are like, listen, dude's a total degenerate, but he told me what I wanted to hear and needed to hear, so I'm going to thank him for that.
Well, because the public is a lot like him. If they got the results that they claim they say they want, people would start building statues of him and instantly put him to the front of the "you can be my next president" list.
Might even say, hey, how do I get in on your parties?
Yes.
There's something good going on there, obviously. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he'd be like a Maquis de Sade level evangelist. Yes. All right. I'm going to table the one worldview question and get to the Democrat candidate there for Congress and is it the Nashville area special election, Aaron?
Yeah, I believe I looked this up.
west.
It's a western district of Tennessee.
Okay,
it butts
western.
up against Nashville, may include a suburb or two.
It touches the western part of Nashville, but then it's to the west of there.
What this really is you are, the old Kevin Nealon subliminal man character that he debuted during SNL during the Pal Schwarzkopf briefings during the first Iraq War, where he would actually interpret what they were really saying by not saying much. Okay. You are getting the subliminal man level of transparency from this woman. What you're seeing is into the mind of the average Democrat female voter in America.
Quote, I don't want kids, I want power.
Correct. I mean, that's the worldview chasm. Now, here's the problem. And you're going to really hate what I'm going to say next. And so am I. And I want you to know that. Okay. She's giving you a window into the soul of basically every female Democrat voter in America. She's also giving you a window into the soul of about 1/3, if not a little more, of those women voting Republican in America. The degree might be different. The degree by which she is taking it is why she's a Democrat and not a Republican, but the premise of the worldview is the same. It's not the premise that makes her a Democrat, it's how far she's willing to take it. But trust me when I tell you, 30-40% of Republican women, I'm telling you, it's true, want the same amount of abortion that woman does. The same amount. And it's often why you cannot get Republicans to move anymore on this issue. It's not because of all the single women voters they never got those voters and they're never getting them. It's because about 1/3 of their female voters will revolt because they've been worked over by the last generation of feminism too. And I think about Scott Rasmussen sent me, again, not from Rasmussen Polling, he founded that, but then sold it, has his own polling firm now. Scott Rasmussen sent me a DM this morning with a poll he had taken about how much young men under 35 around America really know Nick Fuentes. And then those that do, what do they think of him? And what he found is only 11% of men under the age of 35 in America had a, quote, very favorable view of Nick Fuentes. So overall, that's not a very high number. But I am willing to bet 90% of that 11% are people who, if they take part in the process, do it on our side of the aisle. You see what I'm trying to say?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so you have this vexing polarity here. You have this vexing polarity here where these worldviews and what's happening to the women after a generation. I mean, my own son telling me. I mean, you have your kids there. I think it's the finest Christian school in the state. That's why I sent my kid there. All right. I didn't write a check for less than $10,000 for Noah to go to school at Des Moines Christian for the last 6 years. Graduated back in May. Don't regret a single check I wrote. You probably think your kids are getting a great education, though. That's why they're there, right? You're writing the checks too, right?
Yep.
Okay. How many times, though, Noah came home and told me, I'm really struggling to find a girl in my grade who's cute and isn't for abortion. Because who are their moms? A lot of the moms, the wine moms that go to these suburban megapolises and they're never challenged and they're never taught anything. And the entire church structure is to cater to them. Everything's feminized. The messages are, the worship is, everything is. Everything is.
But also, to be fair, the men are clearly fine with that on some level.
Oh, there's no question the men are fine with that. And so now we're in a situation now where the young men are no longer fine with this. But the debate, and that's a good thing. The debate then becomes, though, what will their solution to it be? And that is the worldview battle we have to win. There is going to be a form of revolution in the young men. It's already happening. What will be? We cannot stop it. And frankly, I don't think we should try. It's overdue. What will determine what kind of revolution it is? Is it Jacobin? Or is it patriot?
Remember when
we'll be the older men. We'll be what we older men do.
We talked about the fourth turning, the book, the cycles of history. You are describing this.
Yes. We older men are going to determine this. Will we disciple the younger men? And more importantly than even discipling them, will we model what we're going to claim we're going to disciple to them in our own lives? That's what's going to determine whether the young men just become groiper light, groiper, adjacent, or actual mighty men on a biblical level. It's going to be the older men that are going to decide this. Do we disciple them? Do we model what we're discipling? Let me tell you what we can't do. Coddle them. Well, we can't criticize Fuentes because they'll walk away. Then they're, pardon my expression, complete wussies, and we're never reachable then. They're just snowflakes. Like Jason Whitlock said in our show yesterday, men have hard conversations. So you want us to listen to what he has to say? Cool. Then you're going to listen to what we have to say in response. It's not a one-way street. You don't get to say no enemies to my right when people criticize Tucker, and then when Tucker throws Kevin Roberts under the bus like he did over the weekend, say nothing. I guess that's okay. Enemies to my right, unless they're my enemies. No enemies to the right unless they're the same enemies that I have on the right, then it's totally okay. BS. Not doing that. I texted Whitlock after our show yesterday. I don't want Tucker canceled. I've said that publicly. But I also don't want to be told every time I disagree with Tucker, I'm some kind of Zionist cuck. This is going to work both ways or it's not going to work. And because I'm actually a man, I'm going to make you make it work both ways. I'm not going to let you get away with that BS. Not going to happen. I'm going to push back. Hard on it. Because that's what men do when they're getting gaslit. Well, let me rephrase that. That's what they used to do. And I will tell you one way we will not have the young men we want to have is to coddle them. Just a different form of coddling from what they got from the previous generation. Just coddling with swastikas and alternative histories when it was coddling from megachurches and furrowed brows in the last era. You want to make a man? You coach him hard, but you love him harder. You make sure he knows when he effed up. And you make sure he knows even more when he didn't. But we're not going to coddle people. That's not discipling young men. Hey, Dad, I'm thinking of shacking up with my girlfriend. Well, no, we're not doing that. Nope. And let me tell you why that's dumb. Hey, Dad, I found this Groiper cult online. They might have some ideas. Oh, yeah, tell me about them. Oh, yeah, that's retarded, son, and gay. No, that's not going to work. Let me tell you how the world actually works, kid. Have a seat. But here's the thing, though. As the older men, we only get to do that if we're modeling this in our own lives. If you are not willing to model this in your own life, then you will not have that level of moral standing to make those kinds of calls. And the young men won't come to you expecting any form of wisdom. In fact, they'll have lost respect for you. I really wanted to get you guys to take on that, but we're up against the break. I just noticed that. My bad.
It was good.
Okay. In 30 seconds, is there anything either one of you want to correct or add?
Afton Bain is lying. She does want children, just yours.
That'll preach.
Yes.
That's... Whew. That'll preach. Yeah. Tis the season for Advent. And when Mary said to the angel, "Let it be done to me according to your word," she did not even know what the future would entirely look like. She only knew that saying yes to life, yes to God's plan, would come with uncertainty, risk, and sacrifice. Well, on a micro level, there are scores of women every day facing this exact same choice with an unplanned pregnancy. And depending on what kind of clinic they walk into, and in the case of a Planned Parenthood, they're going to be shrouded in darkness, literally, and encouraged to commit a grievous sin of the murder of their own offspring. But if they walk into a preborn clinic, they're going to be shown the light, urged to walk into it. First, with a confrontation. You can never leave darkness to light without a confrontation. There has to be a confrontation. Now, the method of that confrontation doesn't have to be upsetting or nasty, but an intersection between your belief and the truth needs to happen nevertheless. And so they start there with that ultrasound so that mom can hear that that is another heartbeat. That's another person. That's not hers. And then if mom chooses life and gets into the light, then they are there for her sometimes up to 2 years after the baby is born. This isn't just, hey, thanks for choosing life and here's a parting gift. They're there to help her now into this new life as a mom. Prenatal care, postnatal care, practical things like diapers, car seats, intimate things like counseling. They do all of this free of charge for mom and her baby, though none of it is free. And that's where you and I come in. Y'all have been so generous here with this partnership between Preborn and The Blaze for the last few years. It's been incredible. Let's keep it going. I know a lot of you are looking at end of the year giving options. If you want to donate to a 5-star charity, because for as little as $28, you could fund an ultrasound that saves a life today, and maybe a mom's soul for that matter. Go to preborn.com/Steve. Make that tax-deductible donation today. Preborn.com/Steve. Again, go to preborn.com/Steve. Well, if you are a frequent listener to this show, you know our prime directive is biblical worldview. So when someone writes a book that says what the Bible really says, and it also happens to be written by one of the finest conservative U.S. senators of this era, well, that is an intersection right in our wheelhouse. And Jim DeMint joins us here on the program. It's good to have you with us, sir. How are you?
Steve, it's great to be with you, and it's great to be with someone who can talk about politics and the Bible in the same show. A lot of folks try to compartmentalize our faith with what we do in politics and culture. So I really wanted a chance to talk about this book a little bit with you.
Really appreciate it, brother. Thank you very much. And for, the years of ongoing service that you have given to the country. So thank you. Let's actually start by talking about the other side of this debate for a second, because one of the things that I think is difficult, and I think you can uniquely speak to this. I think out here in places like Iowa, and of course, we're nationwide at the Blaze, but a lot of our audience lives outside of a place called Washington, D.C. And they're very aware that really what we're up against is a spiritual war. They see it in their families. They see it in their neighborhoods, that people are believing things because largely they have adopted what I like to call a spirit of the age religious view. And moving them off of that can be very difficult because there's that level of conviction, right? And yet when I watch our politicians, a lot of them, even the guys we elect, Jim, in Washington, I see them still act like this can be like negotiated with, this can be, quorumed with, that there can be a give and take here, and it reminds me of that scene in The Dark Knight Rises where the Scarecrow says, Democrats are like the Scarecrow. They're like, yeah, this isn't a hearing. You don't bring evidence. This is a sentencing. The judgment's already been pronounced here. And it seems like we just have a hard time getting a lot of Republicans understanding this is existential. You're dealing with a rival religion. If you aren't as convicted in yours, you cannot defeat them, but they'll just keep beating you whether you beat them in an election or not. Jim, is that a valid frustration from somebody like me at all? You've been there. I haven't.
Well, it's more than valid. It's become a burden to me because the great divide in Washington and across America really comes down to whether or not you believe the Bible is true. Our whole culture, all of Western civilization is built on Judeo-Christian ideas that come from the Bible, from everything from the moral laws that we see in the Old Testament to how families are formed, marriage, concepts of compassion and charity. Everything we take for granted as a country is derived from the Bible. But like you said, it's become much different than when I first went to Congress 25 years ago. At that time, the Republicans and Democrats seemed to be on that same page of a pervasive view that the Bible is true. or at least it should be treated with respect, and the ideas should be treated as that. That's not true anymore. I don't know how anyone could look at what the Democrats believe. And you started this show with an ad about abortion. If you've got a group of people who will allow a child to be killed up until the 9 months, they've even supported the partial birth abortion where you could kill a child while it's being born. It's hard to look at those people and see that there's any resemblance to a biblical truth, in effect. So, yeah, I think you nailed it there, and we're in a spiritual war. We can't win it politically, and that's why my book, What the Bible Really Says, is calling on pastors and Christian leaders and folks who call themselves Christians to step out of the shadows and start to participate more in deciding how we're governed as a nation. And so we've got a big challenge ahead of us, but we first have to decide, is the Bible true? And that's basically what this book is about.
I love this sentence in the description of the book. Challenging Christians to go from nominal believers to seasoned pew sitters. And, you know, maybe another way of putting this is, are you in the multitude or are you a disciple, right? Right. Because I think the biggest problem we have in the American church today, and I know we love making fun of the blue-haired lesbian pastor at the dying, denomination, but the reality is there's really not that many of those churches, and there's really not that many of those church goers. The biggest issue we have in suburbs like where I live are these megapolises and these monstrosities that we have constructed. But instead of real teaching and preaching that goes on there, it's not necessarily heterodoxy. It's just very watered down. It's very lukewarm. It's very youth-centered. And it almost like it's designed to reach nominal people, Jim, but then keep them nominal at the same time. And I think of what Paul and Peter both say in the New Testament. By now you should be on to solid food. By now you should have moved on to, you shouldn't still need spiritual milk. And that seems to be what most churches in America want to do, is just keep people on milk and not wean them off of it.
You're right. And not many of those people are going to want to read this book, because I really get into what the creation story is all about, concepts of salvation, who's saved, who are God's people, and the whole idea that Jesus is God. He is the truth. And we've got to learn that. And a lot of what is not taught today is the concepts of repentance, which implies very clearly that we're all sinners. And that's not something I hear a lot of pastors talking about. But again, it goes back to, is the Bible true or it's not? If the creation story is not true, then the Bible's not true. If the flood's not true, then the Bible's not true. Then how do we know Jesus is real if the Bible is not true? So I just think Christians who are willing to think a little deeper, to dig all the way to what is God's motive for creating this world that's so full of death and suffering and sin. Why would he do that? And I've thought a lot about that over the last 20 years, and that's what I put in this book. And again, it's way in the weeds. I have to admit, I try to take on too many things. And at the end, I tie politics to biblical truth and challenge people to look at the differences between the two parties. That, while the Republicans have their flaws, and I spent most of my time in the House and the Senate criticizing Republicans for not doing what they said they were going to do, their platform is built on Judeo-Christian concepts. But the Democrat platform is not. In no way is it. And if you look at the party that's pushing not just open borders with all the fentanyl and pushing abortion, but they're pushing all the transgender stuff and gay marriage. And you just go down the list of things that they're pushing. It's hard to imagine that these folks are taking any of their understanding from the Bible.
No, in fact, now they've gone from secularist, which is a lie. There's no such thing as secularism. All right. I like to say on this show all the time, Jim, someone will always rule and something will always be worshiped. Those are iron laws of the universe. The secular does not exist. OK, so someone that is selling you secularism, it is because they want you to destabilize whatever the current theo is in order to insert their own. All right. And so that's
Exactly.
what you're seeing now is they have gone from they want these spaces de-religionized, secular and neutral, to now they openly are advocating their own religion and their own views. In fact, we've got a Democrat nominee for governor here in my home state that is out there using the Bible a lot. He's misquoting it a ton, but he's using it a lot in his messaging now. This is the next stage of a devolution, right?
Yeah, I mean, we've got to, as you said, go on in maturity in our faith, and that requires really understanding the Bible at a different level. But it has to begin with the idea, if we're going to study the Bible, is it true? Is it really God's word? And if we have to satisfy ourselves that all aspects of the Bible are true, because as I said before, if parts of it aren't true, then we don't know what parts are true, and it becomes a man-made religion. So I'm trying to challenge people to think a little deeper. And again, I know a lot of people, I'm hoping they'll disagree with me and try to prove me wrong, because some of the things or some of the theories that I go into, I know that a lot of traditional Christians won't agree with. But my concern is the Bible has been systematically discredited over the last 50 years in this country. We don't even allow it to be taught in our schools. It's effectively illegal. How can we say it's God's word if most Americans send their children to a school where there is no Christian worldview, far from it? So that's kind of my burden at this point. I'm continuing to fight the battle in politics, although I realize we can't win the battle that way. We've got to win the spiritual battle.
So last thing I want to ask you about, there's a lot of people in an audience like this that feel trapped. The church they go to, it's the best one in their community, but they know it's too soft at the same time. And I'm constantly getting asked for supplemental discipleship material and things of that nature. People that feel like they have to, take the so-called priesthood of every believer to a different level and almost become their own priest in too many cases because of how watered down the church is where they are able to attend. Is this the kind of book that can help be one of those supplements spiritually?
Well, I think it can. And it will challenge people, and it gets into a lot of detail that a lot of folks may not want to get into. But it will stir up a lot of questions. And I found if I have questions and dig for answers, it always strengthens my faith, even if I don't have a definitive answer about everything I'm looking into. But if folks are not challenged in their thinking, there are a lot of apparent contradictions about creation and how we teach it now on the evolutionary side. I spent a long time trying to resolve and align what appears to be credible science with what I think the Bible says or very possibly might say. So I think this would be a great study for any group to get into, ask themselves questions. Again, prove me wrong, but at least dig into it and decide for yourself, is the Bible true? Can I bet my life on, is it true? Because as Christians, we are betting our lives that it's true.
Sort of, come now, let us reason together, as the prophet Isaiah says. All right, Name of the book, What the Bible Really Says, some of the topics, creation, end times, politics, and you. Former U.S. Senator Jim DeMint, good to see you, brother. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve.
All right, God bless. What do you guys think?
Well, it's a book I want to get my hands on. That's for sure. Listen, if we believe what the Bible really says, it shouldn't take until we get into position of being in Congress and have votes to take where things start looking differently, because the game is lost at that time. If we've been living our lives for the most part, checking very generic Christian boxes, we're not going to be any different. The pressure is going to overwhelm us. Our lives need to be looking different from the get-go. This is why I make the comparison. If you live on the cul-de-sac and people show up and at the block party and there's no way to tell over time, the game is lost. Before you get to Congress is the time to plant the seeds, deep roots where you can go and be the efficacious statesman. So, I mean, I don't know. We got to terraform this whole place.
Yeah, there are always both positively and negatively exceptions to the rule, but the rule is never the exceptions. And I want to bring up something that I've said over and over again, both positively and negatively. Again, there are always exceptions, but the people we send to Congress are always reflections of the people who sent them there.
Correct.
Rarely are they aberrations from that. So if you send your Christian-coded or maybe overtly Christian person from your district or from your state to go serve in the Senate or in the House of Representatives, and all of a sudden they get there and go wobbly, most often, unless it's an aberration, most often it's because it's a reflection of the people in their own district, in their own state, who have gone wobbly on some level. So that's the challenge before us. Yes, it is okay. In fact, I think it's very much warranted to be upset with people who go to Congress to serve, who are know their biblical worldview, maybe even have a 100% biblical worldview score, but then they go wobbly. It's okay to be upset with that. But understand the reason why they feel insulated is because they are insulated. They are insulated because the people who sent them there, again, the people by and large, in our system of government still, the people are the ones who have the final say. That's where the buck stops. And so what Todd said is, it shouldn't take, just paraphrasing what Todd said, it should never necessarily take a congressman, a singular congressman or congresswoman or Congress as a whole to have the realization that Christians are really not the ones standing on the wall. It shouldn't take that because we should be doing that in our own neighborhoods. Yes, that's the whole point. And I hope shows like this can help to reinforce that. Encourage when it's necessary, convict when it's necessary. But the whole name of the game is that Christians in the public sphere, and as former Senator DeMint just said there, you cannot just categorize, you cannot just make exceptions, you can't just put your Christianity in one box and your civic engagement in another. That's not how it works. That's never been how it worked.
Amen. When we come back, we're going to play some old school fake news or not. Stay tuned. All right, back here with Hour 2, live and on demand. Here on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. I'm Steve Deace. He's Todd Erzin. He's Aaron McIntyre. Let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox by emailing the show. Steve at stevedeace.com. That's DEACE. Like us on Facebook, me, we, and Gab. You can follow me at Steve Deace Show on X, Instagram, TikTok. And you can also subscribe to our new YouTube channel as well at YouTube or at Day Show on YouTube. That's at Day Show on YouTube. And then finally, thank you to the tens of thousands of you that have left us 5-star reviews on your preferred podcast platform. Those are all very much appreciated. Add yours today if you wouldn't mind. You can also hit subscribe, or if you're on Apple iTunes, follow. And that's how you're going to know that every time we do one of these new shows, it's right there in your podcast feed as well. So thank you for all of those too. And this part of the show is brought to you by our friends over at Trust and Will. You know, juggling a million plans should mean your future doesn't make the to-do list. And again, you've heard me say this before. Every time you check the death rate, it's going to remain a very robust 100%. And so we have to plan for that eventuality. And our friends at Trust and Will can help you do that. And we put them to the test in our own family first before I recommended them to you. And that's who we use to handle our estate decisions with their easy-to-use website, simple to navigate, and all of your information and documents, they are stored securely with bank-level encryption. And now you can easily share all your estate planning documents with trusted friends and family so they know in advance where they stand with their new shared document access feature. So that also can be very helpful, as well as the fact everything is state-specific, customized to your needs, including care wishes, guardian nomination, final arrangements, power of attorney, etc. All right. So use what we use to plan your ultimate future with our friends over at Trust and Will. and get some peace of mind for your future as well. Go to trustandwill.com/Deace for 20% off. That's 20% off at trustandwill.com/Deace. 20% off at trustandwill.com/Deace. All right, we don't get to do it this way very often, but you guys ready to play some old school fake news or not like we used to for many years?
It has been a while.
All right, so I have selected a series of things on X that have caught my eye or been posted by yours truly. And I thought, let's discuss whether or not they are fake news or not. And let's start with this one from the Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance. After 4 years of house prices doubling and in some areas tripling, many young people feel priced out of the American dream of home ownership. A welfare fraud scandal in Minnesota reveals that large numbers of new arrivals aren't assimilating, meaning immigrants, and are funneling our tax dollars to literal terrorist groups. An innocent woman was set on fire in Chicago as the mayor resists federal law enforcement resources to bring peace to one of our great cities. The Obamacare insurance system is buckling under its own weight, and the country is $38 trillion in debt. Our administration is working hard on addressing all of these problems, but you know what really fires up the Beltway GOP? Not any of the above. Instead, the political class is really angry that the Trump administration may finally bring a 4-year conflict in Eastern Europe to a close. I'm not even talking about the substance of their views. Much of what these people have said about the Ukraine war has been proven wrong, but whatever, we can agree to disagree. But the level of passion over this one issue when your own country has serious problems is bonkers. It disgusts me. Show some passion for your own country. Fake news or not?
Absolutely not.
Not fake news. That last sentence. Cash money on so many fronts. It just points to what Aaron...
Cash with a C, not Cash with a Patel. Gotcha. Let's
points to what Aaron and I were just talking about to close out the last segment. And it's not just about the people in D.C. It's about everybody. Show some damn passion for your country. Be citizens.
I mean, is it Bacon is his last name? A Nebraska congressman? I think it's Nebraska.
Oh, Dan Bacon.
Yeah, Dan Bacon, who's contemplating retiring. He's so disgusted by this. He's going to leave Congress over the Ukraine war coming to an end. What the hell is that?
People, the neocon class, will say, well, we can walk and chew bubblegum at the same time. Not along these trend lines, we can't. No, we can't.
Right.
We're going to have to walk first. And then maybe down the line, if 20, 30 years, we can maybe see if we can walk and chew bubblegum at the same time. But these trend lines are not going to allow us to do both.
Yes, and he puts things in comparison to one another, which is so important. He's such a fantastic communicator.
Yes, he is.
And he's why I absolutely hope he's the next president of the United States. But that last sentence, this is why all the time, and why, Steve, then you said, if you can just, to this, taking up the sports throw thing, can you show half of the passion? This is my point. As a citizen, I'll point to all the other things that you guys claim to care about deeply, deeply, deeply in terms of issues on here. But nothing ever gets done. And part of the reason why anything gets done is our idolatry problem. We have all kinds of things where we are absolutely all in on the passion front. But when it comes down to really getting things done, like the vice president says, we are incapable because it's abundantly clear we just aren't serious.
And of course, you guys know, rightly or wrongly, I reject the entire premise that this is a legitimate interest of the United States to begin with. I've rejected it from day one. And you cannot tell me that this is the reconstitution of the Soviet Union when the same European countries demanding that we bankrupt ourselves over Ukraine are still buying Russian oil, as Trump pointed out yesterday. All right, the whole damn thing's a scam, and it's been a scam from the beginning. My heart breaks for the Ukrainian people. They didn't ask for this. All right, but they also were fed a bunch of lies that they could legit win this war, that they could legit defeat the largest nuclear armada on the earth without some kind of verifiable threat of weapons of mass destruction being used, and it was just never true. It was just never true. And sometimes in this life, you have to take L's, man. This is a fallen world. And there are aspects of Ukraine's territory that have voted to be Russian, that speak Russian. And risking your entire country over those territories was always a fool's gambit the entire time. And the very European nations that convinced you to go to war over this and not bargain years ago are the same ones buying Putin's oil as we speak. The whole damn thing was always a scam. And the Ukrainian people it's not much different than, it's a form of a unibrow. If the war is between a proxy state of George Soros and Vladimir Putin, I can promise you there isn't a hero in the war. I can promise you there's not. There's not. And there never was. The entire thing's been a scam from the beginning, which is why a ruthless man like Putin recognized that and called the bluff. That being said, to add context to what you guys are talking about, there was a phenomenal message posted the other day by Wade Miller, and I would urge you guys, if you're on X, Wade Miller is who you want to follow, all right? And Wade is the one of the big policy directors, I think it is, Marine. Again, if you know any Marines, there's no such thing as a former Marine. They'll correct you on that. Okay. He's a Marine. He is he's the ED, Executive Director of the Center for Renewing America. That's President Trump's, the big MAGA think tank, right? Our friend Rachel Cawley was working there in between, and she's back in the White House again, right? And Wade posted about what the cost, when you look at taxes, interest rates. There, you found it, Aaron. Thank you. All right, here it is. Since 1985, nationally, Consumer Price Index. All right, so the total cost of what, not just the sticker cost, all right, but then all the other associated costs that you're already paying out of pocket before you even get to a mortgage payment. All right. The overall cost of a home has increased 3 times and 5 times. Or home values have increased 5 times, but the CPI has increased 3 times. He says, yes, it is possible to find a high-paying job in a small town in Iowa, in which case the relative housing cost is a good deal. Those opportunities don't present themselves at scale, meaning you can't sustain a country on that. Those are exceptions, not the rules. They're outliers. Almost everywhere else in the United States presents the same problem. Prevailing regional wages and opportunities have not kept pace, and home values are disproportionately higher in 2025 than they were in 1985. So that virtually no matter where you live, the affordability problem is worse than your parents faced on average. And this is why some of you who are older keep talking to me, send me notes every now and then, I get them, that we're all complaining about interest rates when you guys pay double-digit interest rates. You also didn't work until June 1st of every year to pay off your tax burden to federal, state, and local. You also didn't have a country that was $68 trillion in debt, and so the inflation was sky high over the roof. You also didn't live in a country that printed all of the dollars in circulation, or 80% of all dollars that have been in circulation in its entire existence in just the last 5 years. You also lived in a country in 1985 where you could graduate from high school, go work at the textile mill, the coal mine, or the manufacturing plant, never spend a day in college accruing student loan debt to become a gay race communist, and have a nice life, and your kids could go and you go to see your favorite ball team at least once a year, have a decent life. Christmas came every year. Totally different era. Totally different era. Aaron, thank you for pulling that out, because I thought that was one of the most insightful things I've seen posted by anybody so far this year by Wade. So even if you don't agree with my analysis of Ukraine geopolitically, help me understand. What the vice president what I hear the vice president saying there is, help me understand when you look at what Wade Miller is pointing out. The most basic confirmation of the American dream is the ability to own your own home. Whether we're talking about homesteaders during the time of manifest destiny and free soilers going out to have their own land, their own place that belongs to them. George Bailey in a movie that is 70 years old now, keeping the Bailey savings and loan together so everyday Americans don't have to, live in Potter's slums paying him rent, but own their own home. Or what it means today. It is the most basic confirmation of the American dream, the ability to be a property rights owner, to the point that fundamentally, as a country, the only people who could originally vote in America were property rights owners. It's the most fundamental confirmation of the American dream, the ability to own your own roof over your head and the ground under your feet. And I'm just telling you right now, if we can't pass that on, the American dream is dead. I don't care how many arms you sell to Ukraine. I don't care how much of Crimea Russia controls. I don't care if they control. I don't care if they've nuked all of NATO. It's over. And at that point, what are we even fighting for? What are we fighting to preserve at that point? And so if you are more fundamentally worked up about property, people owning their own property in Kiev than Kansas, you're a traitor is what you are. And that's not fake news. You're a traitor is what you are. And as much as he has frustrated me on a few fronts here in the last few months, I still hold Tucker in very high regard, if for no other reason. He demonstrated people like Mike Pence are traitors right to their faces at that leadership summit 2 years ago. And he's right. And the vice president is right too, in my view, in what he said there. Are we okay to move on?
No.
All right, go ahead.
If you like this from Wade Miller, I read something the other day from somebody named Michael Green, asset manager or economist, something along those lines. And if you take the government's arbitrary, but it wasn't really arbitrary at the time, definition of the poverty line.
This was sent to me today by a venture capital guy I know, and he said, you need to read this.
We either need to do an evergreen a special edition on this, or we need to spend a lengthy overtime on this, or an entire hour of the show sometime. And if you take the motivation or the fundamentals for why the poverty line back in the 60s was set where it was and apply it to everything today, so the poverty line was the basic food necessities times 3. If you are below that line, whatever that line was, adjusted for inflation as well. If you're below that line, you are the poverty. It's a measure of inadequacy, not adequacy. That's very important. If you take the impetus for why that was set the way that it was in the 60s, but apply it to the modern world, where food prices are not nearly what they were, they're not cheap, but they're not nearly what they were back in the 60s. We have all of these other things, the cost of participation in the economy. The poverty line is $140,000. And now that doesn't take into account the standard of living using these same metrics, or at least the motivations for why these are set. It's night and day, the standard of living now versus back in the 60s. But the entire point was to drill down that unless you are making so little money that you qualify for all of the benefits, childcare credits, different assistance with food, health care like Medicaid and things like that, or you're making so much money like over $250,000 a year where all of the CPI adjustments really don't impact you, $250,000, you are getting squeezed. Even if you're making $100,000, $140,000 a year, in most places around the country, you're just getting squeezed because you don't make enough to withstand all of the different negative effects of inflation, and you don't make so little that you can acquire or qualify for all of these government assistance programs. It's just backwards. There is no and it's designed like this. The welfare state always was. There's really no benefit to trying to move up in terms of pay in this country. There isn't, unless you make $250,000 or more a year. And you wonder why people are getting so angry with those who either are not trying to move up or are so impoverished or are here illegally. That would be one of the reasons why. There's a lot more to that article, but we should spend some time talking about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's providential timing, because it was literally just texted to me this morning by a venture capital buddy of mine, and he said, you need to read this. Holy crap.
I love the idea of an evergreen. One thing I would talk about is they're so angry, and rightly so, but they're angry that they can't go forward with a bunch of money that everybody else has and make the same mistakes that cause the same thing, and we go round and round and round.
Right.
No one will smash their idols. That's the problem.
You know, it's funny. We used to go from rich people voting Republican to maintain their wealth. They now vote, by and large, Democrat because they can afford all the stuff that government is doing without it having impact their standard of living all that much, which is kind of what Aaron was just articulating there a minute ago. All right, let's continue on. All right, this one's from me, fake news or not. I'm responding to Eric Metaxas saying the only reason the American Revolution succeeded and the French Revolution failed is because Americans looked to God for help and the French pushed him away, to which I responded, correct. A revolution, and I kind of referenced this last hour, so we'll reset it. A revolution is brewing among our young men, whether it be Jacobin or Patriot, Robespierre or Washington, will be determined by if the older men finally take discipling, including modeling, seriously. Fake news or not?
I don't think that's fake news. I agree.
Yeah, it's not fake news.
Oh, good. All right, I think we're clear.
I don't know.
By the way, for people that don't know the history, the Jacobins were the radicals in the French Revolution, the Bastille stormers. Okay. Well, Steve, I thought those were the good guys. Well, so did they. They thought they were too. But the problem is, Beelzebub cannot cast out Beelzebub. 0 times 0, we used to say this on the show a lot, is 0. All right. So when a bunch of sinful people who have no reverence or repentance in their heart for Christ end up toppling a bunch of other people who have no repentance and reverence in their heart for Christ, what do you end up with? You cost shifted to tyranny. So we went from one class of people and one group of people that were falsely being marginalized and put into stockades and prisons and facing guillotines to an entirely different class of people who are now falsely imprisoned and marginalized, like what you're seeing in America today. If you're a boomer or maybe even a little older, silent generation, props to you if you've made it this long. Okay, you remember a day and time where the average, if you had too much melanin in your skin, you did not get the benefit of the doubt in American society. You can remember that happening. You lived through it. Well, now it's the opposite. Now, okay, because the civil rights movement went from a movement birthed out of the church to just godless, humanistic. And so now you're doubted if you don't have enough melanin in your skin. We just cost shifted the tyranny. That's all we did. Now it's okay to be racist against whites. Now it's okay to presume terrible things about white people and judge them on the color or lack thereof of their skin and not the content of their character. Just totally okay. Because Beelzebub can't cast out Beelzebub. 0 times 0 is 0. And so what Robespierre and his people did, they just put an entirely different group of people who didn't belong in prison, brought out the guillotines, and then they went after the churches. That's what they did next. And they lined up the priests and cut their heads off. It's called the Reign of Terror. Steve, a Reign of Terror doesn't sound much different than what it was they were overthrowing. Bingo, and bingo was his name-o. You nailed it. Yep. What's the difference? Exactly what Metaxas said. We had no king but Jesus. They had power to the people. Power to the people is just one group of totally depraved sinners toppling another group of totally depraved sinners. That's all that it is. Which means no matter who wins, you're going to get, for leaders, who? Totally depraved sinners. All right, since we already did the Wade Miller one, we can skip that one. We did that one already. Oh, Aaron, that's why you had it handy. I had it on the list. So smart. There you go. Okay. All right, so this is another post that I made recently. Get you guys' take on this. All right, in response to Chuck Todd now, urging folks, quote, this is Marjorie Taylor Greene's release of why she's leaving Congress and divorcing Trump. Chuck Todd, former head of NBC, former political director at NBC News, quote, folks, you should read every word, a serious indictment on the, quote, political industrial complex, end quote. To which I responded, quote, strange new respect for a woman they spent years calling a crazy lady obsessed with Jewish space lasers, literally, and QAnon conspiracies. They're already engaged, just absolutely shameless hacks. All it took for Marjorie Taylor Greene to not be a QAnon conspiracist obsessed with Jewish space lasers is to divorce Donald Trump. And now suddenly Chuck Todd's like, I mean, folks, we've got a problem with the political industrial complex. Complete and total shameless BS, I say. Is that fake news or not, Todd?
That is not fake news. Journalism is magical and not at all broken, as you know. I mean, I can't remember if it was the Times. There's a story going around in the last 24 hours of a 2 victims story where the white guy had his social security number and identity stolen by an illegal immigrant who needed that information to also live an upstanding life. And so it honestly portrays both men as victims of a system gone bad when one is clearly breaking the law and the other one is the victim. actual victim breaking the law. So, yeah, Chuck Todd, unless there's consequences for people like Chuck Todd, so many of the things we talk about are they're just a moot point. If you're this bad and intentionally this bad, you're lying, you're gaslighting all of the time, and you still get paid for your opinions, we're a nation in shambles.
Yeah, it's not fake news, but on the same token, though, it's a little comforting, though, this take from Chuck Todd. We all have things from our childhood that we still do or consume to this day that takes us back to our childhood, and it's a comfort memory. It's a good memory. It's a core memory. For Todd, that would be waking up in the morning with a hot cup of vinegar. For Steve, that would be, what are those marshmallow things you get around Easter? Those Peeps or whatever. You love those things?
I hate Peeps.
You hate those things. Yeah. Whatever. The
Cadbury.
Yeah. Things that take you back to your childhood.
Yeah.
Politically, this is for me. Chuck Todd being an absolute and total, unflinching, unchanging, unrebranded, total hack. That's kind of like political comfort food for me. Like some things just never change.
A nice bowl of Chuck Todd at Thanksgiving.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're like Jim Nance. I heard the Masters music. Do the piano in the background. Aaron's like a tradition, unlike any other.
Correct.
Yes. Yeah. All right. Since Chris just joined the team, I got to squeeze one more in. I just saw. All right. So let's get a quick take on this, because I love Rufo, and he did just join the team here at the Blaze. Check out his new show. Somebody asking him, "You can be racist towards Somalis. Why not with Jews?" Rufo's response, quote, "It's a real debilitation to be so obsessed with, quote, the Jews, that you can't recognize the enormous Grand Canyon-sized delta between Jewish and Somali culture. Jews excel in science, business, academia, arts, and entertainment. Somalis excel in welfare fraud."
Did you see this story out of Minnesota? It's been an ongoing story.
Yes, yeah, I know that's what he's referencing.
Yeah.
But yes, is the Somali community there just raping the welfare system? That's what JD was referring to too in that very first post. Yes, but fake news are not there on Rufo. The differences in Jewish and Somali culture, at least as we've seen it so far play out in Americana.
It's not fake news, and so obviously so. So again, we have to ask the questions on so many fronts. What are the idols that continue to prop this up? That's just it. At this, there are things all of us are responsible for where we claim that this is deeply egregious, and by doing the math, it obviously is so. But nothing ever changes. Why? What are we protecting?
Aaron, you good?
Yeah, this is not fake news. Here's kind of a basic rubric that I think I'm going to start applying more often. If you really believed that, regardless of whatever stripe of Jewishness is really a subversive force, culturally, politically, societally, and your strategy instead is not to subvert the subverters, but to just bleat and cry online, it's probably not a righteous cause. Probably not. If your solution then is whatever else other than, hey, we got to work back and be competitive here and actually subvert the subverters. I'm using their logic here, not my own. This is descriptive, not prescriptive. It's probably more in line with the French Revolution than it is anything else. And I don't believe that, by the way. I don't believe it's necessarily the subversive. I'm just trying to use their own logic. And so that sort of thinking sets you up for dichotomies like this, where you place two completely different, you don't really believe your own talking points. Not all cultures are equal.
Yeah.
You're placing two very, very, very different, by your own definition, cultures into the same box.
Yeah, like I'm sitting here in occupied territory, but I want to live here and not the reservation at the exact same time.
It's retarded.
Yeah. All right, I got to share this one at the last minute. All right. This was sent this morning, and the algorithm just fed it to me. Sent about 9 o'clock this morning from Roseanne Barr. Ready for this? Todd, I'd love to go back and have tell our 1991 selves. This would be the last character. This is the closing arc in Roseanne's character arc. Imagine trying to destroy America and MAGA and turning your back on the Bible just to impress your Pakistani fake Nazi bot followers, LOL. Okay? I mean, I just, you never know, man. You never know. But your fake news or not, your reaction to that from Roseanne Barr.
Oh, it's not fake news, but I don't have to imagine it. This happens all of the time. This is where was it? Martha's Vineyard, where DeSantis bust a bunch of people in, and then they got him out of there as quick as possible. I mean, there's so many. The jig should have been up. The rest of us should have been saying, I used to buy your you guilted me, but no more. But we didn't do that. And again, it's because we just have all kinds of idols in our own heart. There is a whole different reality that we are protecting that causes us to not do what obviously must be done.
It's not fake news from Roseanne Barr. And I, over the weekend, just for kicks and giggles, I went to Nick Fuentes' X feed, and I just randomly sampled. I took random samples of 20, just scrolling through. Hey, there's another one. Hey, there's another one. Randomly sampled whether or not the people retweeting certain posts were from the United States or VPN or another country, and it was 50-50. Just pretty reliably 50-50. Mm-hmm. So that's not great news. It's not terrible news either.
It's just fascinating. You never know. I mean, I assume you guys have heard the story about maybe the most popular porn star in American history, Jenna Jameson, getting baptized now.
But you linked to a fantastic story, and I read it as well, about AI.
Yeah.
Today.
Yeah. The debate on our side about AI.
The concerns are absolutely. No one's going to do anything, Steve. And something does have to be done, but no one's going to do anything about that. People are just on the treadmill. And they're going to go for this ride, and they have their reasons. We're not capable. We just aren't capable of doing what must be done.
All right, when we come back, is it just my own personal thing or a terrible pop culture trend? We'll discuss here on Pop Culture Tuesday in a moment. All right, back here on the Steve Deace Show, surveys say that only 1 in 7 Christians know what the Great Commission is. Never mind. Over here and start cutting myself.
To be fair, a lot of them have Jews to think about.
That's yeah. Okay. Much less know anything about what is happening today, how close we are to finishing, and that's a tragedy because it means that most of us are missing the generational opportunity to be a part of the sprint to the finish of the Great Commission race. That's why Doug Cobb, who's been on our show before, he's the author of And Then the End Will Come. Well, he has written a new book, and it was And Then the End Will Come that we had him on about a couple of years ago. He's got a new book out now called The Sprint to the Finish. And Doug not only explains what the Great Commission is, explores its biblical roots, explains its 3 finish lines. Every people, every language, every place is given the gospel. And he goes on to report on the amazing things happening around the world today to bring the commission to its completion. Lots of facts and figures, and then stories and testimonies from individual missionaries as well. And he spends a good deal of time examining Christ's words and his promise in Matthew 24:14. Quote, the gospel of the kingdom will be preached in the whole world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come. So last but not least, Doug challenges each of us to find our place in this sprint, take part in this Great Commission, whether through gracing or giving, or some of us, maybe even it's going. You can order your copy of The Sprint to the Finish at Amazon today, or go to sprintbook.net. But let me speak as an author. Doug wants you to get the book at Amazon because that's the only sales chart that matters anymore. Okay? If you're not trending at Amazon, you're not trending. All right? So get his book at Amazon at it's called The Sprint to the Finish by Doug Cobb, available at Amazon today, called The Sprint to the Finish. Okay. Pop Culture Tuesday, and I have a bit of, I'm triggered. And when I'm trying to figure out if it's just me, and I'm okay with that, or if this is part of a broader cultural landscape. Okay, in fact, let me ask this. When did Wicked, the musical, debut? 2003. So in this era, right, about 20 years ago. Okay, so we're in the midst of the postmodern era. So I love The Wizard of Oz. It's one of my all-time favorite movies. I've got a speaking engagement in Vegas in January, and I'm excited not just to go there and get out at some Iowa winter, but the Sphere in Vegas is going to still be showing The Wizard of Oz while we're there, and we're going to see it for sure. So I say this as a fan, all right? I detest the Wicked story. Took my wife to see it on Broadway for a wedding anniversary in Manhattan one year when I had a speaking engagement out there. And it's an incredible production. I can see why people love it. All right. So I'm able to parse or compartmentalize the craftsmanship and the quality of the storytelling from my thoughts on the story in and of itself. All right. The first movie from last year, I thought was easily one of the best made movies last year, for sure. I saw the sequel last night. I think it's also going to be easily in my top 10 movies at the end of the year. Now, this year, I don't know how much of a compliment that is because, yikes. All right. But we'll have that conversation later. But I don't like taking the Wicked Witch and turning her into a misunderstood character. And maybe when it was written in 2003, it was just kind of meant, it didn't have a meta meaning to it. But after all the devolution and deconstruction that we have been under, I mean, the idea it cannot be a coincidence that you cast an outspoken left-wing lesbian black woman as the Wicked Witch to then tell a story about how she's really the oppressed one and was really the good guy the entire time. And the white woman who plays Glenda the Good was really didn't have the courage to stand with her sister and was co-opted by the system because it looks like her. Now, I understand that's not inherent to the story itself, but it is to the story they're depicting on film because that's the actors and actresses that are playing this. And it just strikes me as demonic. That we are literally saying the one who did evil was a misunderstood character. So therefore, the evil she does is somewhat justified? Or woe to those who call evil good. Now, am I onto something, or am I just individually triggered by this because I just have a high level of nostalgia in this particular story? But Marvel has done this several times. And if you look, it's always its worst movies when they do this. Like they took one of the great villains in Marvel history, in the Mandarin, and turned it into some kind of a social media Trevor Slattery gimmick in Iron Man 3, for example. And that's the movie where, Tony Stark ends it on the couch, just can't handle being rich, famous, and heroic, and he's breaking down, just complete, total, left-wing BS. What are the best movies? The ones where the villain is really a villain, like Thanos. So am I onto something here, guys? Or am I just triggered because of my nostalgic love for this one particular film?
Your nostalgia is your kryptonite here.
Okay.
Yeah, and I have not seen the play. I've seen the first movie when it came out on video, and I watched it with my girls. And I pretty much had the same impression as Steve. My girls all went to see it a couple of nights ago. They said it's not as good as the first one. But here's why. So this dovetails perfectly with what we were talking about. We could do something about these things, but we won't smash the idols. First of all, getting it right, Steve, versus getting it wrong in this case. and making, making evil ambiguous or whitewashing it all together. When you get it right, by and large, how many movies were in the whole Marvel thing? Like 17 or something like that?
Something like that.
By and large, they got that right? Landed the plane, right?
Yeah.
Morally, what did it do for our culture?
Well, right after that, we had COVID and everything broke
nothing.
and has never really recovered. Yeah.
Absolutely. The people that clap like seals, they're like, oh, give me more. I want to be entertained. It's not, which is why I'm fine with it. Here's the next thing: our idols. You want this to go away? I mentioned this a couple days ago about Plato. Get rid of it. No more fiction. No more fairy tales. No more cinema. What's the point of telling stories? Any of these stories, if they don't elevate the culture? That's an honest, grown-up question. It's a conversation that we won't have because we don't want to have honest, grown-up questions. Let's get rid of all movies. Steve, let's make this real personal to you. You want to have a bad day after this? Everything I'm explaining is why your movie didn't do as well as it should have done. Because we have all kinds of cares and concerns about wanting to be entertained, but not to live. Aaron talks about this all the time, escaping to live, living to escape, that whole thing. Do we want to really address this? Get rid of it. We don't deserve it. It's bad for us, actually. We're ruining ourselves with entertainment. So let's get rid of it. Any chance of that happening? No, of course not. But it's true.
Can we talk about the Carrington event again, like we did last week? This is the entire. I mean, everything that Todd just said there is why we came to the conclusion that a Carrington event, even though we don't root for it to happen, would possibly provide a net benefit for civilization. That's why. So I'm
really quick, because I think you're going to, Steve, to your point, nostalgia-wise, why it's your kryptonite. You knew this was going to, you knew it. You went anyways. We're just trapped.
I knew when it comes to the movies, when I saw it on Broadway, I really didn't know what the story was. I thought it was just an origin story.
No,
the Wicked
you knew
Witch.
now.
I knew now. In the movies, because I'd already seen it in a Broadway production, I knew. Yeah,
but a lot of us are on the nostalgia train.
Right.
We wish things were like, they're not that way, but we're all still just swimming in the soup, and just very few people are going to do what has to be done. I'm sorry to interrupt, Aaron, but you prompted something with how you framed that, with reminding us of that whole thing. And I go ahead and reset the whole thing. But that's the thing. If you really want to change this, you can. Most people won't.
I am loath to come down kind of on the side of, not because it's Todd, but what Todd is articulating, because I've always held the position that as long as these are things in your life, whether it's entertainment or anything else, any pastime, as long as it's put in its proper place in your life, you can enjoy that. That's one of the blessings of that God has allowed you to enjoy. What have you? It's something. It's escaping to live. What do I mean by that? It is escape. It's not escapism, but it's something different, something outside of the norm that you do to enjoy the life that God has given you, instead of living to escape. And you're just living life to polish your idols, to enjoy things that should not be given primacy in your life or your time, what have you. I've always come down on the side of, whether it's movies, whether it's stories, whether it's video games, sports, anything like that, as long as it's put in its proper place in your life, I still believe this, you can enjoy those things. However, what's another way of saying that the social compact is broken in this country? It means that either the majority of the population or a broken subsect of the population has an order of loves that is completely bass-ackwards from what it should be. What was the term that J.D. Vance introduced us to earlier this year? Ordo amoris, the order of loves. Mm-hmm. What is your first love? Now, in this country, we know what the order of loves is from the Democrat Party. It's me, it's self, it's I'm trying to be God. And then secondarily to that, it is the acquisition of power. And really after that, it doesn't really matter. That's all they love, the me, and they love power. That's their order of loves. I think what Todd is trying to get at here, not trying to put words in your mouth, or maybe I'm just restating what you're saying, is that as long as we over here in not left America have an order of loves that is still askew, maybe closer in line to what it should be than what the other side has, but it is still askew, we really can't
fight back.
Yeah.
Correct.
We can't. So maybe we do have an order of loves in our life, that maybe we do love our family first and then try to serve in our church, and we're trying to do this and that. But the video games or the pastimes or the idols are still maybe up a little bit further than what they should be. We're still completely handicapped. So with that being, if that is the case, then there's really nothing redemptive about any of these pastimes at the end of the day. There are still redemptive aspects taken in a vacuum, but we don't live in a vacuum. So it's 1:49 Eastern Time on Tuesday the 25th. There is your
smash your idols.
Almost black pill of the day.
I do think you make the here's the thing where we have done some of the worst work we've ever done in the history of the church is when we take the principle that Todd just articulated, though, and then attempt to impose it, and as like you should use the phrase paint by numbers approach or catch-all approach, and mercy, grace is completely gone. Okay? And that's frankly how you get to inquisitions, is when you do stuff like that. All these things always start with the right premise. But then if you throw the spirit of the law out, then you end up becoming, in many cases, what you hate. But the premise that you asserted, I think, is very true and very important. We can all debate the extent by which it should then be articulated and expressed and deployed. But in many respects, your point, I heard you say, a restating of what I have been saying all this year. Someone will always rule, and something will always be worshipped. The idea that stories are concocted just for fun, and there is no inherent communication of value, is not true.
Well, to your point,
we're not automatons. We're not formulas. We're human beings made in the image of God. We are expressing some form of hierarchy in everything we say, do, and think. We are expressing some form of theology in everything we say, do, and think. Okay? Now, can people who understand that, can they have a broader way of navigating that world than those who don't? Well, sure. I mean, if you've never had an issue with alcohol and you and your buddies, none of their buddies do, that you're trying to reach, can you do a Bible study at a sports bar? Sure you can. But if you got one buddy in that group who that's where he used to get his drink on, you can't go there and do that, right? But the overall premise that you are asserting, which is, if the values are not rooted in righteousness, then they will be rooted in unrighteousness, and there's not an in-between space. That is correct, 100%.
What do we call people who prefer fiction over reality? You often present this question.
Yeah, they're psychopaths. They're insane.
They're insane.
Yeah.
Well, we prove all the time. I love that story. Will you live like that? No. I used to make this a point about Braveheart, the great speech. Oh, stirring, the soundtrack. Well, do you live like that? Not even close. I don't want to. It scares me. Well, that's insane, right? And this is like, we constantly, this is my toy lightsabers, video games, sports. Yes, sports bro. You're choosing fiction over, you're not on the team. You're in no way on the team. But look at how that makes you feel. How you live for that. But you'll never
I think I 100% agree with all of that. Yeah.
That's a problem.
And that comes from you because you aren't able to recognize that some values are going to be communicated. If you recognize that, then you can look at things like, hey man, that I know that these handful of players wear their faith on their sleeve. They do great things for the Lord in their communities. You can make distinctions and nuances if you understand the meta. If you don't understand the meta, then you're going to succumb to it. And there's no distinctions and nuances. You can't. And that's how you end up into the form of idolatry that Todd is describing. because you are now letting your attachment to these pursuits determine your morality or lack thereof.
Yep.
Determine your motility or lack thereof. Your activity or lack thereof. You've made them into a god. All right, that'll do it for today's show. Back at it again tomorrow, noon to 2 Eastern, right after Glenn Beck, right here on Blaze TV. Until then, go hard, Romans 8:28.